Good morning. My name is Don Miller, and I'll be the moderator for the post-contract award session. What I wanted to do as you are coming into the room, I've got a poll that I want you to look at, and I think it's up. And we're just trying to understand what entity best describes you or your firm. Are you a contractor, consultant, public or local agency, supplier, or other? So if you could go into the poll, it's on the right side. If you click on polls, it should come down, and you should be able to click on who you are. That way we can get a feel for what kind of audience we have today, and the presenters they'll help them to present to the audience. So if anybody's having a couple other ground rules, we want you to mute your voice, your microphone, and also we want you to turn off your camera, save the bandwidth. Also, if you have questions, there's a chat area on the right that you can put a question in, or there's a Q&A area that you can put a question in. I'll try and monitor that as we go into the presentation. So anyway, if you do have questions along the way, we certainly welcome those, and we'd like to stop along the way and answer those as we proceed in the different areas. So we'll start in about another minute. Again, if you have a chance to get into the poll area and indicate what entity best describes you or your firm, contractor, consultant, public, local agency, or supplier, or other, that'd be great. So we kind of get a feel for who our audience is today. We'll be starting in just a few minutes here. So, all right. I think it's about 9:45, so we're going to go ahead and start. And I'm going to be running the slides today. And let me just make my share screen bigger so that you can see. Okay, I think John and Craig, can you see my share screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, is it large?
It was, and then went back.
Okay, just hang on 1 second. Okay, just 1 second. I think I have to pull it over to my other screen here. Hang on 1 second. Okay.
There you go.
Is that better?
That's better.
Still okay?
It's back.
It went back?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just, I know what I'm doing wrong here. How's that?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just start from the top here. Again, my name is Don Miller. I'll be your moderator for the session today. And again, this is the post-contract awards session where we're talking with we got panel members from the prime contractor and subcontractor talking about best practices to work together for project success. So a little bit about me quickly. I help with the DB technical support. We're a consulting firm. I work for the Oneida Engineering Solutions, full service Native American DB consulting firm. And previous to that, I worked for 33 years with DOT. So happy again to be working with the DOT and helping them out with things such as this DB annual meeting. With me today, we've got a couple of presenters that I'm very happy to have along. I've known them for a while, and I think you're going to find them very helpful in providing some answers and some really suggestions on what to do once the project contract is awarded. And let me just introduce the two presenters. The first one is our prime contractor presenter, John Zignago, who is the Secretary Treasurer of Zignago since January of 2019. 5 years prior to that, he was the bookkeeper for that company. He is the DB coordinator at Zignago and does a great job with helping the DB office with many things relating to the DB workers. He also received a civil engineering degree from UW-Milwaukee. He worked 2 full seasons and 5 summers of road crew experience, so he's been out on the road. And before that, he worked in the kid shop as a kid. That was right on his bio, so I thought that was kind of neat. I wanted to put that in there. So welcome, John, and again, a great member to have on our panel today. We also have with us Craig Clements, who is going to be kind of more or less representing the DB area and typically as a subcontractor. But I know Craig also primes jobs, and he works the president of Pro Electric. He started his electrical apprenticeship in 1996 with IBEW Local 494. He became a journeyman and worked for local electrical contractor in the Milwaukee area. So he too, again, was out there in the workforce. In 2015, Craig incorporated Pro Electric and worked as a one-person electrical contractor in the southeast Wisconsin area. Since 2005, Pro Electric has expanded to over 60 employees. So great growth in the 15, 17 years of his Pro Electric firm. Craig is a member of the Oneida Tribe of Indians and obtained DB and MBE status in Wisconsin for Pro Electric in 2007. And interestingly, in January of last year, 2021, Craig started a new business, Pro 2 Pave, and has reached 50 employees by the end of the 2021 season. So Craig is kind of president right now of two different companies, so very successful, and we'll have a lot of good tips and pointers for you today. So again, post-contract award, what are we really focusing on here today? So once a prime contractor is awarded a contract, there are many important items throughout the life of the contract that need to be understood, completed by both the prime and subcontractor to give the contract team the best chance for completing a contract on time and probably most importantly at a reasonable profit. So we've got some different areas that we're going to talk to. These gentlemen are going to help us with some of the things that they like to do, and these are both very successful contractors. So listen up. They've got some things they want to talk about prior to construction, during construction, and after construction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over a bit to the presenters, and they're going to talk a little bit about this first slide prior to construction. There's a few things on here, so I'm going to open it up to John and Craig. So go ahead, fellas.
Thanks, Tom. So to start, after the letting, the first thing subcontractors want to know from a prime is if we use them. And unfortunately, us primes are not able to answer that question until we have an official award from the department. Part of that reason, Zignago used to allow subs to call on the day of bid, and we would tell you. The problem with that is we actually told one subcontractor that we were going to use them. We actually did an internal review of our numbers, and it turned out they weren't the true low bid, and we had to award our subcontract to a different contractor. The contractor that we verbally told that to, we ended up in litigation with him. And a verbal contract can't be a contract. So many primes are very similar to Zignago, is we want to tell you, but we just cannot tell you from a legal standpoint until we have an award. So after the letting is done, you can try calling primes. I know if you call Zignago, we're probably not going to be able to talk to you until we get the award from the department. So in the meantime, as you anxiously wait with us, you can, once you see who the low bidder is the day after, you can, and you want to know who they use, you can start checking the DOT's website to see when the prime is awarded the contract. Typically, when we are awarded a contract, we will notify our subcontractors who we intend to use, and then we will not issue the subcontracts until the department issues us our subcontract. But when the award is made official, we will verbally usually let our subcontractors know.
As a subcontractor, I usually call, even though a lot of times I'll get a dead end, they won't tell me. And then we monitor DBE's the DOT's website. Most of the time it's posted by Friday, and we look to see if our numbers have been used. Once we do see it get posted, we'll contact the prime contractor and ask them if they used our number. We try and do this as quick as possible because I have subcontractors and or vendors I need to contact, and I'll give them notice of intent to use them at that point, but we won't issue any subcontracts until we get the contract from the prime. Make sense?
Yeah. So once we say the awards come out, you get the verbal acknowledgement from the prime, and they tell you they receive their contract, and they send you their subcontract. You're going to get a subcontract from the prime. And on to point number 2, subcontracts. When a prime sends you a subcontract, it's usually tied more or less to how you quoted the work, or it should be. So you should make sure that subcontract matches the way that you quoted the prime. And the very important, sign anything, that you and the prime are in agreement on how the work is going to be done. Typically in this industry, there's contract items, and if you're given a contract item, you're expected to perform all the work necessary to complete that item. If you ruled that out in your quote, if say you excluded certain things, then you should, the prime should know that and should have read your quote. Now, on subcontracts, the primes, we used to withhold 1% on all of our subcontracts because the department would hold 1% on us, and then we'll just split the cost. It would also give us some flexibility in case your quantities were decreased or increased, or if we had to back charge you. We are no longer allowed to do that according to ASP 4. Some current contracts from over a year ago that are finishing out, you still have retainage probably. Some of you may be aware of that. But on all new contracts, the primes are not allowed to do that. So very important if you're working with a prime that they're not withholding money on you. That is against the rules, and you should notify the department. Well, first the prime, or the department, or the DB office. Now, a prime can withhold money on you with requesting permission from the department. They have to go to the engineer, validate their reason for why they're withholding money. They have a concern about your or whatever that concern may be. If the DOT, if the department thinks that that is a just reason to hold money, they will allow it. And anything else
on a subcontractor's view of contracts, the contract is very important. If everything goes smooth, we never really look at them, but they're protecting the prime and the sub. Very important to go through that. Usually we'll send the subcontract out to our attorneys for review. Once we've reviewed a prime's contract, usually they're the same from project to project. So we'll compare it. We know our attorneys have already reviewed it. But look at all your items. I've had primes add in items for me without telling me. It gets kind of interesting. So make sure that when you sign it, you're aware of everything on there and what your responsibilities are. All the way down to how LDs are going to work. Like we said, we talked about retainage. That's not allowed anymore, but bonding is. We put a rate in our bid that we put a % in for bonding. That's still fine to be taken out, but very, very important. Highly recommend having an attorney and your insurance agent reviews all the contracts prior to signing.
And that's a great point on bonding. I know a lot of people that are subcontractors that we work for the first time are surprised that we take out 1% of their contract payments. And that is industry standard, and that's common practice in our industry. And that's because as a prime contractor, we pay our bonding company to get the bond, and we just split that cost. It's also very typical. That cost is usually 0.5%. We take out 1% for actually bond and dues. The dues mostly go to the WTBA, Wisconsin Transportation Builders Association, which helps for the good of the industry. So if you do not want to be charged that 1%, that is okay, but so much of subcontract is tied to how you quote it. If you don't want that 1% taken out, please exclude it on your quote, and then we will remove it on your subcontract. When you exclude it on your quote, we know on day of bid to add that to our bid, to add 1% for your work. So as long as we cover the costs, it's but very important so you aren't caught with that.
On our quotes, we have a stated rate on there, we include 1% for bond. I've had some primes withhold more than that. I've gone back and argued it and got the money back because I put 1% on there. If you don't put anything, you can pretty much expect the prime to withhold 1% as a standard.
And on the main point, Craig said, once you work with a prime, the contracts are very similar. Actually, when you work with Zignego, I use the same contract format for all my contracts. So once Craig and me became familiar, there's a comfort level after you work a few contracts with the prime. There's probably a comfort level, and after you have that attorney review it, you'll probably become familiar with each prime and their contracts.
So we'll move on to schedules and communication.
So after we sign our contracts and we're in agreement that we're going to perform this work together, it usually starts off with a pre-con meeting, and we'll get into that. I think. Well, we can get into that now.
A little further down.
A little further down, but I guess the main point of this whole entire conversation, I think, is communication right there on the screen. And so much of communication is involved with schedules. Schedules are just as important. Timing schedules are just as important as are the pay items and how you're going to get paid. Ultimately, schedules and timing turn into money. When your work and you're the lead item on the job, then that means you are responsible to keep the contract moving. If you do not perform your work when it's your turn to get the work done, you could be assessed liquidated damages by the prime. The prime will be assessed those damages from the state, and those could be passed on to you. So very important throughout the contract to watch the schedules that the prime is expecting you to come in and to communicate your thoughts on the schedule.
As a subcontractor, as soon as we get the subcontracts, probably right around the same time as the subcontractor, we'll start contacting the prime and find out who the project manager is for that job. And we'll start the communication with them on how much time we need, when they plan on starting the project, what their concerns are, and we'll start that discussion. We usually ask the prime to, when they start putting their tentative or initial schedule together, to send it to us so we can fill in where we fit in with our tasks. It's our responsibility to tell the prime how much time we actually need, and we'll get that on the schedule. And that initial schedule that's submitted is extremely important for as things go on, and as we can reference back to the original schedule to see if liquidated damages are to be given out, who, when, and how, all based off that initial schedule. So it's extremely important to keep that and to speak up and let them know how much time we need.
Craig and John, we've got a couple questions.
Yes.
So Sandy had asked, is withholding payment different than retainage? If so, how? Withholding payment different than retainage? If so, how?
Yeah, I would say their retainage is just 1% taken and then would be contract. Withholding could be done two different ways, I guess. You could have major problems with a subcontractor, and we could request to hold all with payments, meaning all of the money payments are stopping to you. Now, that's if there's big problems. If there's a smaller problem, say on one issue, we can ask, we don't want to penalize you. That's not our intent. We just are trying to protect ourselves as primes. But if you have a smaller problem, say a $5,000 issue, we only want to hold $5,000 on you. If we don't want to stop a $100,000 payment, for example, because you have a $5,000 problem. So if it's a $5,000 problem, we're going to request from the department to only hold with $5,000. But it is different than retainage, because retainage was just automatically being taken out.
So retainage used to be an industry standard of 5%, and that was to handle any problems, any issues that were out there. That is no longer allowed. The prime cannot withhold retainage. DOT is actually no longer withholding retainage from primes. So there's a big difference. You will only have money withheld now if there's issues or problems, and the prime has to write to the state and request permission to withhold anything. So any of the contracts that are bid after, I think it was last December, don't quote me on that, you should not have any retainage withheld from it.
And I know that we're talking about DOT contracts, but a lot of us work in municipalities. Most municipalities still are retaining on the primes. And as Craig says, the industry standard in those municipalities is 5%. Just something to be aware of, because I know a lot of us either do work for other municipalities or hope to do work.
Even if you are working in municipalities, I mean, everything in this session is geared towards DOT. But obviously we all do a lot of other work with municipalities and things. So when you have that 5% withheld in a municipality, once the project has come to a substantial completion, it's very important that you request that retainage to be released or reduced. And as long as you've done your work, most primes don't have any problems with that. So don't just sit and wait. Cash flow is huge in a company. So request that they release it on those projects.
John and Craig, there's another question relating to holding payments. Is the subcontractor notified when you hold payments?
Yes. Yeah, we have to notify the subcontractor, and if there is a problem, I'm guessing they would already be aware that there's an issue, but yes, we would be notifying you that we are withholding payment.
So that it used to be called a routine retainage that was held automatically, but no longer is.
So the kind of the rules of the game, John, is that if you're withholding from a sub, you're gonna let them know about it.
We let them know, and like our intent is not to penalize you. Our intent is to protect ourselves, and our intent is to if we're withholding on you, there's a problem. We want you to fix your problem. As soon as that problem is resolved, and we get confirmation from the department, the engineer, we will release that money. So it's just kind of to motivate you to fix the issue, so to speak.
Now with that goes back to communication, which you'll hear throughout this whole session. There should have been communication prior to that happening.
Yes.
If John had an issue with me on a project, I'm going to go get it done. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to take care of it. If I don't think I should be paying for it, I'm going to have that communication with him, and we usually resolve it. So it should never really even get to that level as long as you're communicating with the prime.
Okay, we're going to move on to some other items. Let me just pull up my main screen here again. Okay, so we've got some other items prior to construction. I want the panel to kind of comment about the things that they do to be successful. And so John and Craig, go ahead and talk about these items.
We kind of touched on it generally with schedules and communication. And right off from the beginning, before any construction happens, there is always a pre-construction meeting on all DOT jobs. And that is the prime and the departments there. The department brings a lot of their team. And the prime, at least from Zignago, we invite all of our subcontractors to that pre-construction meeting. Very, very important that you attend that meeting. The original schedule and will be hashed out there, or chain of command, a lot of important things of the overall picture that will affect the life of the project. So very important when we as a prime invite a sub to it that you attend.
As a subcontractor, it's extremely important to go to the pre-construction meetings. You will meet everyone who's anyone regarding that project, all the way from the local police department to the municipality. You're working in, the engineers there. Remember, this is a time to sell yourself. You're getting face-to-face time. So a lot of these municipalities, I mean, when I first started, we would go to these and I'd become friends with them, and it expanded to, they would call me for business. They had a knockdown or whatever. I got to know who the local engineers were, all the way up through who's who with DOT. It's very important to know these people and have relationships with them. And if you don't attend the pre-construction meeting, things can be scheduled, things can happen, deals are made. And if they're affecting you, you don't have time to speak up. So very, very important to attend those meetings. And
one of the people that attend the meeting is the department sends a labor compliance specialist to all these meetings. Their job is to oversee the certified payrolls. People that are worked in the DOT are probably aware of the CRCS site and how they pay, these certified payrolls are tracked. Taking a step back, we are all obligated, contractually obligated. The prime is obligated that every person on that contract is paid a Davis-Bacon wage, or sometimes referred to as a white sheet wage. Very important when you quote and do your contracts that you know what those wages are, so you know what the cost is. You have to pay those wages. If you don't, the prime has to step in and pay your wages for you, and we would end up in litigation over that. In our contracts, it is required that you agree to pay the Davis-Bacon wages. And now, to make sure that you are doing that, certified payrolls need to be submitted I believe after 2 weeks after the work is performed. Now, if you're doing weekly payroll, which is required on DOT jobs, I do them, and I'm sure most contractors do them on a weekly basis. Very important to get those payrolls in. Using the site can be difficult, even if how to report them. Now, the department has a specialist there that we can defer to and talk to in the meeting. If you're new to CRCS, very important that those get in. So you don't want to have payments withheld because you're not doing something as simple as submitting your payroll reports.
So the labor compliance specialist is a very important person to get to know. If you have any issues with payments, anything, if you can't work them out with your prime contractor, they're there to help you. If you're new to the DOT world and you don't understand how to do certified payroll, I'd recommend contacting the labor compliance officer and your prime. Typically, most primes wouldn't have a problem helping you with that, teaching you how to do it, working together. You guys are a team, and they wouldn't want any member of their team to fail. So again, attend the pre-construction meeting, get to know who the labor compliance officer is, get to know your prime. Very, very important.
And as you're attending meetings and we're talking about communication, to point number 6, chain of command. There's so many different issues on these contracts, and it can be difficult sometimes, I understand, when you're new to this, of when you have X problem, what person do you go see? Do I talk to your prime? Do I talk to the department? General rule now, keep in mind, the department has a contract with the prime contractor. The DOT has a contract with us primes. If you ever do not know who to contact, start with your prime, because now the chain of command should be DOT, prime, subcontractors. The DOT doesn't want to hear from all subcontractors and all their issues. They want everything to go through the prime. Now, there are cases that some things, and we talk about in this presentation, it makes sense for the DOT and the subcontractor to talk directly. So you kind of got to know when, and we'll get into those situations. Now, from a prime standpoint, our chain of command, Craig talked about it. We have a project manager. Zignagel assigns a project manager to every job. It's usually a PE, a professional engineer, that will be your point of contact for all issues. Now, at least in Zignagel's standpoint, if you have issues related to payments or questions, you should always start with the project manager, but that might get kicked up to, if there's a problem with how you're getting paid, that would be a good time to call someone like me that's paying you on your checks and issuing those check vouchers. If you have issues, call the CFO of a company or a secretary of the company. Or if it's a big problem, don't be afraid to call the president of the company. Very important to know who to talk to when.
Yeah, the chain of command will be issued by the prime. Prime should give you a copy of that. If not, don't be afraid to ask for it. You need to know who to contact and when. The primes will usually ask for the subs to put together a chain of command as well. So I put a project manager on just like the prime does, and it will go all the way, escalate all the way up to me if there's an issue. So knowing who to call and when, or when to take it to the next level, is extremely important. Again, all part of that communication process. And
so actually, most people don't know about point number 7, or most people new to the work, is it's the notice to proceed. The notice to proceed is the letter given to, it's a notice given from the department, the DOT, to the prime contractor saying you are allowed to begin work. This is after the contract. Even though we have a contract, we just can't go out there and start ripping the road apart. There may be utility work that needs to be done, or traffic control coordination. So before you begin your work, make sure you are directed by your prime to begin. Very important to note, and Don brought it up when we were talking to him, the DOT actually doesn't have to pay for any work that you do before that notice to proceed. So if you're a traffic control subcontractor, for example, you start moving the barrels because you feel like you want to be a good subcontractor, you want to be ambitious, you want to move timely. Well, the department doesn't have to pay for those traffic drums technically. So make sure you know when you are directed to begin your work.
But with that, it's also important to get on the initial schedule and be at the pre-construction meeting, because there is a thing called a limited notice to proceed, where, for instance, someone like me might want to get out there and start doing traffic signals ahead of schedule. So you can speak up, you can talk to the department. They want these jobs to go smooth and say, hey, look, I'm not going to impact traffic. I really don't need erosion control put in place. I can start my temporary signals, I can get them up and get them out of the way, and we get a head start on the project. This time of year, we're always looking for somewhere to go with my crews and get things started. So speak up, communicate with them and say, hey, and they usually are willing to work with you, but do not start until a notice or a limited notice of proceed has been issued.
Okay, we've kind of covered 4 more areas prior to construction. Any questions? I don't see anything in the chat or in the open question and answer area. So we're going to move on. Let me just push my big screen back up here again. And we're going to move on to during construction. So the guys are going to talk a little bit about some of the things that they would suggest that you think about and work on and do during construction to make your job successful. So go ahead, guys.
So yeah, now construction began, and now just similar to pre-con, after that, usually the same team, maybe a slightly smaller version of that team. Well, there will be weekly meetings. Strongly encourage every subcontractor to attend every single one. If you are not able to attend, it's always good to send maybe a foreman or a supervisor, someone that can brief you on the meeting. If you cannot attend, there are minutes of these meetings. You can be kept in the loop. Make sure you're on the distribution list of those minutes meetings. Very important to attend every one. You might think, here's Craig, he's an electrical guy, he moved all his electrical signals, he doesn't have to come to the end of the project or in the middle of the project, so he thinks he's good for a month. Well, this is construction, so weather impacts construction, it impacts that schedule that we keep talking about. So what is going on in the entire project does affect you, and there may be things going on that that the prime and the other subs don't realize that are affecting you. So when there's a big problem going on, say the grader schedule is pushed back, that's ultimately going to affect your schedule. So very important, even when you think it doesn't, your work's not the main driving item that week, the controlling item, it's still very important that you are in attendance just to have that general, communication that what's going on the project.
On a subcontractor's view of it all, it's extremely important to attend the weekly meetings for a multitude of reasons. One, I'm the only one that really knows my work, what I need to do, when I need to be in there. So if they switch something up and they want to pour some concrete, everyone's in agreement, yes, let's go ahead and pour it. If I'm not there to tell them that I have loops that are in the roadway, it's my fault. I need to be there. I need to speak up at it. Much more than that goes on. When I first started in the DOT world, I would go to all the pre-construction or all the weekly meetings and watch how other people handle themselves, what they do, what they're doing. I'm learning from others. It's super important to be there. On top of which, there's Zignego might be a prime on the contract, and they might have a dirt guy that they've hired. Well, the next job, that guy might be a prime. So I didn't realize it, but when I first started going to week, almost like an interview for me. I got to know everyone and got to be friends, and those relationships that you build by attending all these meetings are extremely important. On top of which, getting to know all the engineers, the DOT, and everyone. If you don't attend those meetings, you don't get that time with them, you're not going to build those relationships. So protect yourself, go to the meetings, speak up when you need to speak up, and communicate.
And just to finalize that, very important to know on these weekly meetings, teams is what they're called. We are a team. There's one contract that the department has issued to the prime. That contract has all of our different kind of works. As prime, we might have split that work out. That Craig's going to do, Pro Electric's going to do the electrical work. We're going to have a dirt guys, and Nagel's going to do the concrete. But at the end of the day, it's all one contract. We are all in it together to get that contract done. Primes, I know I can speak for all primes, want to see our subcontractors succeed. We want to see you make money on our job. We want to work with you again. So keeping that team attitude. I know we talk about the DOT, the engineer, whether it's an in-house DOT or a consultant. The prime's point of view, a subcontractor. At the end of the day, we're all working as a team to build that one project together. So usually when one wins, we all win.
I've had other subcontractors, DBE subs, call and ask for help. Say, I didn't know that I had to be there. I didn't know that they wanted me out there. Now they're looking at charging me liquidated damages. And I said, I've gone to every single weekly meeting. I've never seen you there once. I knew you needed to be there, and I don't even do your work. You don't have an excuse. This is your responsibility. Get there, attend the meetings.
And just on to point number 2, at these meetings, the most common thing that's going to be talked about is the schedule on these projects, and avoiding those liquidated damages and performing the work on time. So again, communication is key. Look, primes get it. We're contractors. We have other work. We do work for municipalities. Some of us have private work. We have a shortened construction season. We're all very, very busy. Sometimes that means that you have conflicts about showing up. When you see that schedule, you might say, oh crap, I have to be in another job at that same time, and my crews just aren't going to be able to make it in there. Let the prime know that early and often. The prime might not be happy to hear that, but you at least letting them know we can work around it. Don't wait until you're supposed to schedule. You were scheduled to show up and you don't show up, and now we find out and you don't return phone calls and you're not showing up and the clock's on you. That can be very problematic. When you are at these meetings and you see the look-ahead schedules, let the prime know, I'm not going to be able to make it in 2 weeks like you hope. It's going to take me a month. And we might moan about it and not be happy, but we can adjust our schedule, hopefully, or we can adjust for it. So again, communicate, even the bad stuff. Don't be afraid to let us know if you're going to have a problem. Early communication is always a good thing.
The look-ahead schedules are very important, and it changes. It's definitely a moving target. I've gone into meetings and all of a sudden the prime puts me as a controlling item. I never was a controlling item, or I don't feel that I am the controlling item. Speak up. Say, hey, this schedule's not right, or if they don't give me enough time. On top of which, even if I run behind, we could have delays with weather or even getting product. You need to make sure that your prime is aware of that and talk to them. It's, again, about the relationships and working together. And
number 3, request for information process. If you want an RFI from the DOT, it's always best practice to go through your prime, to not go through the department. The prime is responsible for everything happening on the job, so it may be okay if you talk to the department, but once something's formalized, it's very important to keep the prime contractor's contact person in the loop. Maybe it's just as simply as a follow-up phone call with them, or seeing them in an email with the department.
So most of the time, a lot of the projects, you can resolve small issues. Anytime an issue comes up that requires money or time adjustments, definitely fill out the RFI. We'll usually talk to the prime and find out if they want us to handle this direct. Most of the time they do, so we'll work direct with the department on resolving the issue, but everything gets CC'd or sent through the prime. Anytime there's any kind of extras with time or money, that all gets sent direct to the prime, and the prime holds the contract with the state. Do not send stuff direct into the state. It's not yours to do. You have to go to the prime with it. So request for information is a very valuable tool that we have it'll start time stamping things, how stuff is getting resolved, whose responsibility, whose plate is it on, and all that stuff needs to be documented through that. So very, very important piece. Don't just agree to do something without filling something like that out.
Hey guys, we had a question here from Amy. Amy asked, on the prime side, do you send out weekly notifications for meetings? So how are the invitations for the meetings usually handled?
Those are usually, once the meeting is scheduled, it's usually a set time every week at the same location. So we will invite you to the first one, let you know location and time. After that, it's pretty much a weekly, the same time and place, where I don't think we'll send a notification. You're just kind of expected to be there.
They're usually discussed and set up at the pre-construction meeting. A lot of times the prime will have an office or there's a job trailer. That will all be discussed at the pre-construction meeting, where it is, phone numbers, addresses, everything for that job trailer will be discussed at the pre-con, and time and date will get agreed upon, and it's usually a collective thing. Primes will say, hey, how does Tuesday afternoons work? The engineers might say, can we make Wednesday mornings? If you have a problem making that meeting or you have a conflict, you can speak up at that point in time. They'll actually adjust it sometimes, but it's that communication.
Yep, and it's really important to make sure you get your name on the list of the distribution list, because the DOT or some member at the meeting typically puts out the meeting minutes, and so you need to review those minutes every week, and there may be notifications that maybe the meeting's going to be at a different time the following week. So it's important that you read those minutes, and for all kinds of reasons, but make sure you get on that list for distribution of those minutes. That's really key.
We keep a running copy of all the meeting minutes every week, so we can look back and reference to it just in case something happens. But it is extremely important to make sure that you are getting those weekly minutes and attending.
And review them. Make sure if there's something very important that you guys talked about, that it's being recorded. So if we do have to go back and look at these minutes, and 2 months later when we're having a dispute, that's your proof. That's going to be the proof. So it's very important that it's recorded how you thought the meeting went.
Okay, guys, we're going to keep moving here. We've got some more items during construction that are important, so go ahead.
Point number 4, updates. Again, no such thing as over communication. Just knowing what's going on in your job, knowing how things are getting paid for, knowing how everything's tied together. If you have an issue showing up, let your prime know. Craig, do you have anything to add on this one?
All of that stuff. It's just anything that you can think of. It's okay to communicate. Don't worry about making someone upset. If you can't make it there, don't tell them you're going to be there and not show up. Communicate that. I can't stress that enough. Letting them know what you need and it could be, I need this dirt done. Hey guys, I have to get this controller in place. I need you to grade this out because we got like 3 to 6 weeks for WeEnergies to come in here. They may not realize that. You work as a team together and make sure you communicate all of that.
Number 5, this is a very important one because it's ultimately everything we're talking about. This is business and it's about money. So pay estimates. Just so everyone knows, that's tied to subcontracts. When you work for most primes and you work for Zignego, we are in agreement that Zignego, for the items that you are contracted to work for, perform the work for, we will agree that you will be paid what the owner pays us for. So if you're doing a conduit item and the department pays us 1,000 linear feet for that conduit, we're going to pay you that 1,000 linear feet that the department paid us. So essentially, when the prime gets paid, we have 10 days, not essentially, we have within 10 days to pay all of our subcontractors. Again, that goes back to the ASP4 requirement that all primes have. If you're wondering when a prime gets paid, it's actually posted on the WAM site when the pay estimates are approved by the engineer. After you see that, you should know you should be getting paid within 10 days. Now, I personally at Zignego, I do payments weekly, so as soon as I get paid, I flip around and pay you the money. We don't want to sit on your money. You need the cash just as much as us. So some primes I know may not do that. They might sit on a little longer, but they have to pay you within 10 days. Very important to understand that prime contractors are essentially just a pass-through or a middleman on those quantities that you're ultimately going to get paid for. It's ultimately, for your items, we're paying you what the department paid us for. Who's paying those for the department? The engineer. The engineer is going out there and measuring your quantities. And that's how you're going to be paid. So very, very important that you are talking to the engineer about quantities. Now, Craig's probably going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. But last thing I want to say about pay estimates, we have a contract, how to perform work. Very important to understand your quote and the specifications that the department has and what work is necessary to perform that item. Sometimes if you have to backfill your curb, after you pour a curb and gutter, you have to backfill. That's incidental. You don't get paid for that. But once you start to learn those specifications and those rules and your scopes and your contracts, it happens that extra work, it happens on every contract. There's work outside of the scope of the project that the department wants you to perform or the contractor wants you to perform. And now it's very important, if work is being asked for you to be done outside of that schedule or your scope, your first question should always be to the prime, how am I getting paid, or who is paying for this? Now, if the department has agreed to order that work, there will be what's called a change order. And the department will pay the prime for that extra work. And you'll come to an agreement that they'll be paid on, just like the other subcontract items, at unit price cost. Or they might not like the unit price cost that you quoted them on, and there's a little negotiation. Before work begins, you need to negotiate how it will be paid for. And if they don't like the unit cost, they have the right to pay you on time and materials. Very important to understand, do not do any work until you understand how you're getting paid. Now, there's sometimes work that is being asked by a prime contractor to be done that the department says, hey, we're not paying for that. We're not responsible for payment. Maybe a prime contractor like Zignego wants to change the schedule or the scope of your work to accelerate the project for the benefit of the prime's work or another subcontractor, just to keep the schedule moving. That's the prime's responsibility. Then the prime's responsible for payment. And then you know that on that work you'll have to be invoicing or billing the prime for that work. Last thing to add, sometimes there's not everything needs to be billed for. Sometimes there's a gravel pile that you need moved out of your way. Just call your prime and he'll move it for you. He probably won't charge you. And then he might ask you to move your conduit pile out of his way when he's working. Little things like that. Since we're in the road building industry, we want to work as a team and help each other out. We don't need a bill for every little thing, but on the bigger things, definitely know before you do any work who's paying for it. Craig,
That's exactly who is paying for it. So if the prime asks you to move a pile of dirt and you feel that you need to get paid for it, ask them, am I going to get paid for this? Who's paying for it? If you're going to do a favor, then do it. Don't move the dirt and send a bill as a surprise. All it's going to do is make people mad. We all need favors done. We work together as a team. So I have a situation or something I'd like to discuss with you. So I'm a subcontractor. Traffic signals are very expensive. So I get all my traffic signals in and I get we're just going to say $100,000 bill. I grab that bill, John, I send it to you and I say, I need to get paid for this. What's going to happen? I just send you a bill for traffic signals. Are you going to pay it?
No.
Why not? I have it on the job.
Right, because we never agreed that we were going to pay it. So
if there was an agreement made ahead of time that, hey, I need some help, maybe the prime contractor would help that. Other than that, all estimates are done by the engineer. So me as a subcontractor, I have the ability to apply for stored material. Again, that's with the engineer. So once I get that stuff in, the engineer will release payment. It goes to the prime then pays me. So there is a way to get paid for it. But if you just send the prime invoice, nothing's going to happen. They're not going to pay something that they've not been paid for. So just know that there's ways to work together, and it's about communicating.
I get it all the time as a prime. I get invoice mailed to me saying, hey, you're going to pay for this invoice. I did this work, and I think I did 2,000 linear feet of conduit. But I'm going to refer to say, we have a contract agreement that you're going to be paid what the owner pays us. It's very important on your quantities that you're talking to the engineer, because yeah, you might think you did 2,000 feet, great, but the owner doesn't have that same quantity agreement. So just to wrap up point 6, if there ever is a change order that's going to be formally issued by the department, that has to go through the prime. Us primes have to submit it. We actually get a 10% markup on the change order, so it's very important that we get those markups, so we get to compensate ourselves for our management time. Now, talking about that chain of command, it's very important that it's not really necessary that the primes are talking to the end. A lot of times we'll defer ourselves to talk directly to the engineer about quantities. Very important that you're doing that. So when you get that pay estimate, it shouldn't be any surprise. You've already talked about that with the engineer. You know what he agreed to pay you for, and you're in agreement on that. Now, documentation of quantities performed. It's very important if you're doing work that and my guys report it on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, and I account for it on a weekly basis through their payroll. And when you get those quantities get performed and you think you're getting paid in your accounts receivable, as you get those pay estimates received, it should be no surprises. Now, there are surprises, and sometimes your guys go over measured, under measured. It's a constant reconciling of your quantities. Craig,
As a subcontractor, I require my project managers to do weekly quantities, and they meet with the engineers once a week and they verify what's been installed. The engineers will actually post the estimate in their office, so we know what's coming down and we know how much money we are due in. This should be no surprise. As long as you communicate, there's no surprises. We will know exactly how much you're going to get paid. Just communicate with the engineer and do your quantities.
Hey guys, we got to keep moving here, so keep going. We got about 10 minutes left here, so.
Yeah, so just from kind of wrapping that up now, it's make sure that you're getting paid from a cash flow as a business owner. Make sure you're getting paid your quantities when the work's completed, when you should be getting paid them. Now, things that could hamper that is if you're not getting your material certs in, the department may not pay the full amount or may only pay partial. Or maybe it's been a rain leak and the department doesn't want to go out there and measure that conduit that you put. Make them go measure it. Make sure that your money's moving. Make sure you're getting your submittals in so your cash flow is always moving. And we all know it's so important.
Material submittals is a very touchy, tricky subject. You, as a sub or as the prime, it's your responsibility to know what you need to submit on. If you have any questions, ask the department. They will tell you. But don't expect to get paid until all your material submittals are in. I require my project managers to get those in immediately, right away. As soon as we place the order with one of our vendors, the vendor will issue us all the material submittals we need. We put a packet together. Don't expect to throw 1,000 pieces of paper together and let the engineer sort it out. We document everything per line item. We spell it all out for them so they have everything. And extremely important that you keep a copy of it, because 6 months later, a year later, the department can say, I didn't get that. Well, we turned it in. Well, I don't have it. Now I have a copy of everything that I've sent to them.
And Craig knows this, electrical contractors have a lot of certs they need to get in. Ultimately, for all those items that he's performing the work on, it's his responsibility to get them in. Know what you're required to submit. Now, if you have a good engineer that's proactive, he might ask for them, but if you have a new engineer, he might not be asking for them. So it's your responsibility to get them in ahead of time, so when it's time to get paid, it doesn't withhold and it doesn't slow down any payments. Moving on to the next slide, safety. Me and Craig were putting this presentation together with Don. We even joked that we could have a whole presentation on safety. So we don't want to get too into the mud on it. I'm sure there's probably some other talks about it today at the conference in the next 2 days. But just again, on that communication thing, safety is so important. At the end of the day, we're out here to make money, but first and foremost, everyone needs to return home to their families the way that they came into work. We all know that. Communication is key from a prime standpoint. If you see the prime directing you to do something unsafe, let it be known. If you see another subcontractor doing something that you know is unsafe, please notify the prime. Look out for each other. Again, a team attitude. Great.
Safety is a team effort. Actually, I had a friend who has another company. This is on inside stuff. Someone else on the project was injured. OSHA showed up and his guys weren't trained like they should be. So he called me now in a panic. Safety is a team effort. If you have any questions or anything, primes usually are pretty established and have safety directors. I have a safety director that works on my staff. You might not. Talk to them, communicate with them, ask for help. We all want to be safe. If you see something going on that's not safe, you're not telling on them, they might not know that they're doing something wrong. Get the prime involved. The prime will take care of it. Just make sure you communicate with that.
Point number 9, just the communication. There it is again. So very important. We talked about change orders. Make sure all change orders go through primes. The second bullet point there, contract modifications. Sometimes not every change order comes to agreement about dollars. It is about time and adding time to a project. Time is money. Keep that in mind. So essentially, if you don't give enough time and you're the controlling item, you could be assessed liquidated. Time is money. They're just as important as money. Again, make sure your work's all at the quality that the department is, that know the specifications of what needs to be done so your work needs to be paid. The last point, claims, strongly discouraged. If everything that we've talked about in this presentation has been done properly, there no need to file it, or hopefully we won't have to get to the claims. If there's a very big issue, we do have the right to file the claims with the central office. Sometimes you do have, I'm going to be honest, you have a bad engineer. Problems happen and people just don't like each other and they don't want to pay for stuff that we think they are contractually obligated to pay for. We might have to kick it up to a regional manager. If that regional manager doesn't agree, able to resolve it with us, we might have to go to central office. We do have the right to do it. So it does cost litigation and a lot of time, and you're going to the DOT to review your claim. So it is a very tough process. I would try to avoid it, but we keep in mind that process is there.
So the DOT world is pretty small. We work repetitively. I think I probably have 6-7 jobs going on with Zignago currently. You repeatedly are working with others. It's a small community. It's a small community of networking, and it's built off of relationships. With that, I'd say I'd highly recommend joining WTBA, Wisconsin Transportation Builders Association. We're both members. You network with people, you work together. I mean, a lot of times I might have a problem with Zignago and I might call another contractor to say, hey, is this right? Can you help out? What would you do in this situation? And all those relationships are built off of going to job meetings, going to WTBA events, attending stuff like this. Very, very important to get involved.
And if you do get into a claim, the road builders, the transportation builders will assist you through that process because they have a lot of expertise on that fun stuff. So just kind of going to that last slide, we're talking about now we're at the end of the contract, how we're going to final it out. Usually a semi-final is issued after all quantities have probably been agreed upon at that point, and if there was retainage, it would be released. But so Zignago's process, I think a lot of primes are similar, is we will send you your proposed final quantities on the semifinal and say, hey, this is what the department thinks your quantities are, finalized. Are you in agreement? We ask for your lien waiver. If you don't respond, we give you 30 days to respond. If we don't hear from you, we're in the assumption that that you're in agreement. So very important that any other pay estimate, if you were missed something, you can get caught up on the next estimate. The final is it. This is your last chance to get paid. Once that contract is closed with the department, no one can get paid. So very important to review your finals even more thoroughly than any other pay estimate. But I think if you do a good job talking about your quantities throughout the life of the project, and there should be really no surprises. I've worked with Craig now for 6 years, and I don't think he's ever disputed the quantity on a final estimate.
No, we usually we have that all worked out ahead of time. We're in constant communication weekly with the engineers. And then when it comes to the finals, we have all the documentation together. We work with the engineers, we put it together. By the time they send it to Zignago, Zignago sends it to us, we do a quick reference. 99.9% of the time, everything matches up. We sign off, sign the final lien waiver, get it back. The faster we get it back, the faster we get paid. So we want to turn that around as fast as possible because cash flow is huge to small companies.
And I wish every subcontractor was like Pro Electric, but sometimes
you can say that again.
Well, some subcontractors are surprised on it, and it's kind of they're like, why wasn't I paid for this piece of sod, this sod I did? If you're a landscaper. And like, why didn't you talk about that on the pay estimate that it was paid? So being proactive throughout the project and the communication with the engineer who's ultimately paying for your quantities, so very important. I guess we're running out of time, so I think we'd like to open up to questions, comments, or concerns.
Yeah, we've got one question from, I guess it's just a pointer from Marianne. She said, just an FYI, Wisconsin Diggers Hotline has a free diggers damage prevention training online. Takes approximately 2 hours and will receive a certificate of completion. So again, a nice tip there for people who need to understand what Diggers Hotline is all about for damage prevention related to utilities. So thanks, Marianne, for that. We're going to open up now to any other questions. Feel free if you want to unmute your microphone to ask the question. On the screen, there's contact information for John and Craig. A lot of good information. I wanted to thank WTBA for providing their members, John and Craig, to help us out with this presentation. Thank you, Matt Grove of WTBA. And I'll just wait a bit to see if there's any other questions. We got about 2 minutes left here. Just wanted to mention, hang on one second. I want to pull my big screen up here. I got one more slide. Evaluation. So after every one of these workshops, there's a place on the main, I think it's on the main, I'm not sure exactly where it is, where you can fill out an evaluation for the workshop. So please do that. We want to use any of the suggestions or pointers that you may have to make these events better in the future. So with that, I'm just going to see if there's any other questions. Otherwise, in about a minute or so, we will be completed with this particular workshop. I believe the next set of workshops will start at 11 a.m. So look at your schedule and look at the overall program to see if you want to join in with the next one of the next workshops. While I'm thinking about it, thank you, Craig and John. This isn't something we pay them for. They come and they offer their advice for free for everybody, helping the DBE community, and we really appreciate that. So thanks, John and Craig.
We'll both be in person tomorrow, so hope to see some of you in person tomorrow.
And if you guys come up with any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to John and I, and maybe we can help you out.
Okay, so seeing no other questions, go ahead and fill out your evaluations. And that'll kind of conclude our presentation for the post-award workshop. So thank you for attending and have a good rest of the conference.